Hello, everyone. Welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable. This is episode 38. It is, let's see here. It's the Interchain episode. Hosts for today are Greg from Rivet, Dave from Din.social,
Hello.
Evan from Tatum.io, the
Hey.
community manager, and Satoshi Sean, everyone's friend. I'm Joe, architect founder of Dragonchain. Quick update on last week's show. The lot distribution, I think it's happened or it'll happen today. Each host from last week will receive 222 lot. Every topic contributor will get 83 lot. These ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes, which is probably the most interesting thing. There is the March theme selection is posted, which was made from the governance vote that everybody who had World Blockchain Roundtable lot. So let's see here. Oh, sorry. This is to make suggestions for March. Sorry. So the top 7 themes are going to go into a GI vote for those with World Blockchain Roundtable lot. As a reminder, if your theme's used, you will receive lot based upon the total number of views, along with everybody else who actually gets questions asked and the hosts. So it's kind of a cool thing because we're able to the community, the people who are participating get to select what the topics are. They'll change over time. It'll be really interesting stuff. We just went through a thing where we passed a vote to reward the people that are actually providing the topics for the shows. So anyway, also go and get some World Blockchain Roundtable merch. I think mine's supposed to be here late this week, so go order some. It's pretty cool stuff. And let's see here. Let's go straight to let's do the intros, right? Anything going on with any of you guys this week?
Yeah, I can go.
Go for it, Greg.
Cool. So this week in Mega Texas, people are really starting to get excited about this DAO thing and some of the more powerful, impactful local change type of things you can do if you bring to bear the funding of groups. Along a similar vein, basically, we have the Sanj DAO right now, which basically took the idea of crowdsourcing action for a specific purpose. Sort of like Constitution DAO, but now they're going to be putting their money towards Assange's defense, which is huge, right? There's not really been anything like that in history recently, because crowdfunding kind of got defanged. So it's got its teeth back, and there are no pliers yet invented that can pry them out. So it's pretty cool.
I like the idea of a DAO as like an unstoppable crowdfunding technique.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. We usually do this at the end, but I think it's a great thing to do in our current events. With what GoFundMe did to the $10 million.
Yeah, I was thinking
raised.
that exactly. Yeah,
That's just. I mean, it's criminal, and it's. But I guess if you see your elected public servants up there and they're literally saying, yeah, we can do insider trading, it's fine. That really sets a bad precedent example for, these huge corporations.
Yeah, it's crazy she said that, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, not to get political or anything, but things have been wild lately to where,
Yeah.
It's
Powerful
like so
love,
blatantly obvious that we need
right?
a better way to do things.
Yeah, and basically it's like challenge, what are you going to do? But GoFundMe, they get money. I mean, like they make a huge profit. They take like a chunk of,
From charities,
20-30% or something. It's a big amount. Anytime someone has a GoFundMe, I literally just give them money.
Right. Well, and the most powerful tool in the sort of ruling class's belt has always been pooled resources, and that is uncannily where they seem to put the most restrictions on the little guy to protect him from himself.
Yeah,
Right?
Well, the fact that they
It's such
said
a ridiculous thing because really what we're doing is we're saying, hey, no, we're going to pool our funds and now we're going to use it for.
Can I say anytime I see a GoFundMe, if I know the people or if I have any chance that they might listen, I tell them you should be looking at accepting Bitcoin, and I think there might even be some crypto
Exactly.
alternative.
But also,
But-
because they wouldn't give the money back. They said, we're not going to give the money back to people, which would have been acceptable because we made like $3 million off that. So we're going to keep our $3 million and then we're going to decide where people get their money.
Right.
It was the most blatant. It was literally like, a king from the Middle Ages getting the taxes and just screw y'all, we'll do what we want.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but if they had accepted crypto, that's it. It's they can't. I mean, I guess they could refund it to those wallets, but it would be so much better. It would just held a mirror up to all the crap of the legacy system. It was
Yeah.
really, I think, revitalization for me
And
to
that's
see
been
how bad things are, how much crypto is needed.
Yep,
continuing on
absolutely.
the DAO conversation, with catching up with current events and stuff, and also kind of like a plug for Den Social. We're seeing a lot of like I, for example, happen to start operating like a DAO without thinking of it as a DAO over on Den, and so there's a lot of tools that we've got now where we're seeing opportunity to this is like we've got the tools here to allow people to not have to know technical stuff or be techie or computer savvy to participate in a DAO. You'll probably still need somebody that can do that to organize it. But we're seeing, we just opened our new governance layer, and we've got features coming out directly related to that probably next week. And that's going to roll out a whole new phase of what we're doing over there. And I hope to get I was talking this morning a little bit about a friend of mine locally he's been in real estate for a long time, and we're seeing in my town a lot of like gentrification issues or overdevelopment where the locals don't recognize their city anymore. And there's also a couple of key players who are throwing their money around to snatch stuff up for profit because he sees or they see the development moving in, so he's like, oh, I'm going to get these warehouses and stuff, and then I'll flip them for more condos or more apartments for students or whatever, that kind of thing.
Right. If you can't create scarcity by by fiat, then you have to do it by conquest.
Yeah.
Right?
So similar to what kind of like you're doing with Mega Texas, I was thinking, man, and he had this friend of mine had this idea first, and it kind of got me running with it. But we're looking at now, who can we get in the local real estate people that have a little bit of money to put behind it to form a DAO and protect some of our city ourselves that way.
Right.
If our government isn't going to do local government or isn't going to do it for us. So yeah, I think DAOs are really catching on to like the potential of that. People are seeing that and they're starting to wonder what could I do with that if I had the tools, they're easy to use.
Right. I mean, I think it'll lead to things like developers doing stuff that benefits everybody as well, right? Like you'll see proposals for projects, but they'll also include like parks or other public goods that people care about, restorations of old buildings, things like that. Those will become more important if people have the power to pool resources and power.
Yeah,
So
or just
let me
buy up
ask
some
you
land
one,
to keep it from being developed, make it woods.
So how does this work for my own clarity here? Because I'm literally broadcasting from a warehouse right now in Prague that could be gentrified very soon because it's happening with a building across the street, and that's exactly what happens. They bulldoze the whole thing down and make apartments in there. So how does this look from the DAO perspective?
Greg, you want to take that? You're
it,
really good at explaining these kinds of things, I think.
Yeah, it
DAO
can take
master.
on. Really, the key here is getting people
Daoist.
who are interested in this, the story, right, and getting their reaction to it. Like you probably got tons of people around that warehouse, and they've got friends and family, and they care about their communities because they live in them and they see them every day, right? These are the folks who need to realize, one, this is happening. Two, we won't like the result. And three, we can actually do something about it. So,
Sure.
There's a communications piece that comes with it. And that's really the most important part. There isn't really a piece of technology that can do that. But this technology can make it so that nobody can stop you once you've got your momentum going. You get everybody together. You help teach them how to do what it takes to get everything on board. And with some of the things that Dan has done, it gets easier to organize around votes.
Right.
You
Ease of use is important to
Yeah,
get.
you don't
people-
need easy use was the big thing because you don't need to have. Oh, you can imagine going down to the guy down the street and say, okay, you have to get MetaMask installed. Now you have to do, but don't do this, but do that. You don't want to do any of that. This is very much just you just need to log into this system, get an account. We can assign you a lot based upon whatever is meaningful for how you're modeling it. And something that's worth saying about this whole thing. And it even ties into interoperability. And it's a hard thing to describe because I think of them as parallel universes, really, that the physical world and the way that we manage stuff like neighborhoods and towns is relatively broken. It depends on where you're at. Some places are more broke than others, but you can't do what you're supposed to be able to do, which is go and get an elected representative on board with it, because you're competing against moneyed interests that don't even live in your community, right? That it doesn't work the way that it's modeled right now, and this is a seeming workable way to fix things because the people can now easily together compete in a transparent way against those outside interests to do things locally. Among other things, right?
Here's the magic next step, right? Once you have that running and you have the momentum, there's a global community of people who actually give a damn about making the world better, and they're all building in this space. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say something about
you start
that.
You start to bring them in and bring in the power of their already generated wealth, the capabilities of DeFi, the creatives here who can help add campaign or from ad campaigns to connections. Like,
so it's essentially.
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines with what Greg said. It's kind of the opposite of what Joe said. It would unite your community there and create a cohesive group, like almost a structured group. Everyone says they want to belong to something bigger than themselves, and it creates that instantly. But it also opens it up for the international community. For me, who like Greg said, just gives a damn to be able to not just contribute and send $10 or $20, but to be part of that too, and fully understand to become part of the community,
right?
To take that to the next step.
The opposite of cancel culture is empowerment culture.
Exactly.
Instead of something else. Like, this is us giving people the ability to have to raise themselves up, as opposed to tearing people down to the level of the small guys, the only recourse that people have.
That's why you're the Taoist or the Tao Master.
And as for interop related to this topic, it is interesting that DAOs are primarily, well, not always, but it can have a huge effect with real world interoperability. So
we're not doing current events there, Chief.
I thought that's what that was, right? Right.
Well, I mean, we can talk some more.
If
you mentioned DAOs, Greg's going to talk for 10 minutes.
What the DAO topic
to counter your point, Joe, I think that government does work the way. I mean, we're getting free crack pipes, man.
Yeah,
literally getting government crack pipes. $30 million worth of crack pipes. That's not
fact
working.
Checkers to tell us that there aren't any actual crack pipes. Seeing
the first thing I even posted something on Den. The first thing, did you actually read the 75-page PDF? And I'm like, well, no, but I don't really care to. I know government's broken. I know that all those programs are ridiculous. So
I actually, I read that part, and it was like $30 million, and it was just laid out for it's basically like paraphernalia but it's clean and high quality.
Yes.
In the use of crack, cocaine. It just listed a bunch of drugs.
Is it pipes? I know they're doing syringes and stuff. I haven't looked into it.
Pipes, basically anything you need to do
Well,
They're legal
syringe.
drugs.
The idea is
I don't.
that
I don't buy that. I have to go look into it because I know.
The
I know
idea
that
is
there's
that
a
it's
reason for
supposed
the
to be-
syringes. I just don't know the reason for the like. There's no reason for the pipes and stuff. They get syringe programs. I understand that, but
it's meant to be a way to push people towards the allegedly less dangerous of the two. It's a harm reduction approach, right? The idea
that's what
is
legalizing
needles
marijuana is
are
for.
dangerous because they spread spread blood diseases if they're not clean.
I think it's
Therefore-
much more nefarious. I think.
But also fentanyl is smoked.
Keep the homeless,
and so
keep
it
the
has a
homeless
really
camps
big scourge, so.
going.
Well, in Florida, we've recently legalized cannabis for medical purposes, and down the street there's a big sign on the side of a cannabis store that's offering evaluations for cars and stuff, and its entire marketing is for people that are addicted to drugs. It's like, hey, get off of opiates, stop drinking so much, use cannabis, it's safer and non-addictive. Like it's literally a situation where like it's work. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but it works for a lot of people to just, hey, if this is your habit, stop being so dangerous and stop taking like these fentanyl and things that are dangerous and addictive.
Right. Well, I think
And
the key to it is
they're
like
doing cannabis instead.
I think the issue is like they have two choices, right? They can sell or they can give crack pipes to people, or they can let the private sector take care of it. And they're not about to authorize a non-black market in that.
I was reading
So
during
look at dangerous practices because of prohibition, and then they're going to hand out things that it's just like it snowballs. They create a problem and they solve their own problem.
I was reading something interesting that's related about 2008, the financial meltdown and everybody losing their homes and shit like that. In a retroactive study, or what do you call it, retrospect, that like the illegal drug trade actually accounted for keeping a lot of communities afloat during that time.
You
And
can't
I thought that
ignore
was an
that,
interesting
right?
take. Talking about private sector taking care of something, legal or not, it seems to be that the government assistance wasn't
Yeah.
helping as much as just free trade kind of thing,
That's
keeping
right.
everything and
Well, I
keeping
think-
everything up.
And I think the metered approach to this, right? Because like you hate to just like sensationalize the idea because probably somewhere somebody suggested it because they thought it would help. But the problem is like when you centralize it and try to one size fits all a solution that somebody suggests because they see a problem locally, like that's where we get into trouble with big centralized governance systems. And that's sort of one of the neat things, just to plug DAOs again, right? It's one of the neat things you can do.
Yeah. Well,
You can
speaking of DAOs,
localize those problem solvings. So
speaking
that
of
you're-
DAOs,
you're in
We should
control
start a
of
crack pipe
making
DAO,
sure the
is what
solution
you're
doesn't.
saying?
no. Speaking of DAOs and speaking of broken governments and speaking of interoperability, all in one, I would the ideal system to envision would be where your geography wouldn't matter anymore. That you could literally accept the governance model that you fit in best, so they would all compete with each other. It would be kind of like the U.S. Republic as it was intended on steroids, where you know what, I don't like the way Kansas has this new tax or this new reg. I'm going to move over to Texas or Oklahoma or Nebraska, right, or Missouri, and it would be up to you. But the problem is you have to move. You have to sell your house. You have to and when you sell your house, you have to deal with the taxes and everything that you're trying to leave. Whereas if you just had you imagine how they would compete. You pay lower taxes with our DAO, and I'd have a flag in my front yard, or something, but it'd be very interesting where I could just say, oh, you know what, this one's broken. I'm going to jump over to this one. I'm going to have to transfer my tokens over, and I'm going to have to buy into it, or I'm going to have to do whatever. But
Or
that would
even
be
crazier.
remarkable.
Even crazier. What if it could be at a granular level? Like, what if you didn't need, like you didn't need a department of public works to sit there idling all the time to make the roads work, right? You just need an entity to pick itself up or to spin up and grab the resources it needs and take action when the roads need repair or when you need to add new roads or whatever, right?
Like an on-demand
Like-
entity, government
Right, yeah.
entity.
Like why trouble with creating an ongoing administration of a thing when you can template it and spin it back up as if it were a piece of infrastructure if you build it the right way, right? Like
Or what if all that
you
was
don't-
an NFT and all you had to do was move it over to a different chain?
Sort of like government as a modular microservice.
Yeah, no, that'd be. I mean, that's the whole libertarian dream, right? I want to
clustered
I want to pay
microservices.
for my own cop service, which would actually be effective. And if they weren't effective, I would replace them. I'm
Joe,
going to pay for my own.
we actually pay for our own cop service. That's what.
No, you don't have any choice. You have one you can pay for, and if you happen to live,
Oh,
like if I lived over
choice.
across the lake in Seattle, guess what? They fired all of them. All the cops are gone now over there. Because of the vaccine requirements, and because I don't even know what else they wanted to defund the police and everything over there, right? All the communists.
Oh,
If I were living over there, I'd be screwed, right? And so
you made a point. If it was under a DAO, then they would have part of their own choice in those mandates, whether they're going to be accepted or not.
Can we talk about the cancel culture hitting the world of crypto this past week? Because that one probably is important for all of this, and then we can cut over maybe.
I've been busy. What happened there?
It was really sad, frankly. I don't want to talk about Brantley. Honestly, he was a good friend of mine and like a really nice guy. And I don't fucking support what was done to him because I thought he was a good person. And I thought he was helping the space.
Level what happened, though.
But ultimately, there's something bigger here. Like there's a more important issue that we need to pull on our reason hats and focus on. That's outside of the emotion of it, because what happened was really kind of dangerous.
Well, can you explain what it was? Because I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So out of the mists of the muck of the swamp of the internet came somebody who had a lot of spare time on their hands, either for axe grinding reasons, motivations that we never investigate because we never look at who's dredging this stuff up, right? Like these mystery drops from the ancient internet appear, and everybody's focused on exactly what they tell you to focus on, the thing they drop, right? Nobody ever asks like who showed us this and why. But he had some really nasty stuff.
Who is he? You need to say.
Oh, okay. Jeez. Okay. Fair enough.
I'm reading about it right
now. Basically, one of the key responsible parties behind the rise and proliferation of ENS, the Ethereum name service.
Very important.
Yeah, he and really gave a lot. Like, if you saw somebody giving blood and sweat and tears to pushing the idea and getting people to pick it up, that was Brantley. Right, like he's out there saying, "You need to check this out. You need to try this. Hey, you. Hey, celebrity. Hey, government. When are you gonna fucking do this?" Like he had conversations going on with Coors over beer.eth, or Anheuser-Busch, I guess, over beer.eth. Like this guy was out there with a passion to see ENS be a thing, right? And a decentralized entity for the registration of addressing on the blockchain is a big deal. It's an important thing to get us to where we need to be. No one's going to want to look at public keys, right? They're going to want to have .eth or something like it.
Mm-hmm.
Big important thing that's going to help the world get to a place where this stuff can help them in a real way as opposed to in a technical way, right?
So they attacked him for some political stance or
he was and has
right?
always been Catholic, right? And kind of staunch about it.
That's what I'm reading right now. Yeah, it's a religious
4 kids, because he didn't believe in contraception, and neither did his wife. The other beliefs that come with really sort of believing in the dogmas of the Catholic Church were there, and I don't agree with those. But I'm also not Catholic anymore, so it's my right to not believe that. But essentially, these old tweets were resurfaced from 10 years ago, practically. And out of the blue, there was this sort of urge from some of the, I think coming largely from some of the newer folks in the community, to want to shove him out of his position with the ENS Foundation, or the foundation that's behind ENS.
Can I read the tweet?
Leadership.
Yeah, I mean,
read the tweet. I'll read the tweet because it's
pretty awful, honestly. Like I don't condone the words.
I've got it in front of
I
me.
don't care. It's like words are words. Words are words. I would. I mean, if you
here's
whatever.
what I'll say before you read the tweet is that like I'm just now finding out about it like live, so I'm reading the tweet and I'm reading what people are saying about it, and what surprises me is well, it doesn't surprise me that it's a religious belief of his, but it's a legitimate religious belief, even if it's political and not religious. But it's also I watched Hillary Clinton say something similar to this on MTV a long time ago about
Right.
sexual things being not right or evil or ungood. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to me to see who this applies to and who doesn't. That's what I want to say. So,
Yeah.
But it
And-
doesn't exist forever on MTV from the 90s or whenever that was. So
and
I
it
think
was in
that-
the 90s. Yeah.
Well,
exactly. It was in
no,
the
it's
90s.
that's not the thing. It's that this is not a
Well, this was
protected class.
2016. It wasn't that long
Okay,
ago.
Right.
whereas
So-
that's a protected class. So the tweet is, and
Well-
we're not agreeing with this, but it is.
Guys, we're not going to solve this problem either. There's a bigger problem
No.
that I want to get to before we move on, though. Go
Let
ahead.
the man read the tweet.
Okay.
Sorry.
He said homosexual acts are evil. Transgenderism doesn't exist. This is 2016, mind you. Abortion is murder. Contraception is perversion. So is masturbation and porn. Okay. So those are words. Those are words. You can disagree with them. You can agree with them. It doesn't fucking matter. And guess what? The divide and conquer bullshit that we pretty much talk about every single episode. It's everywhere. It's on any goddamn thing. It depends on what color you are. Depends on what religion you are. Depends upon if your earlobes are attached or not. They are going to try to divide us. And guess what? These are the things, because this could have been something racial instead. It could have been a joke. It could have been something where he is quoting a rap song, and they would have come after him. Why? Because ENS is threatening something that the people that are doing this shit are influenced by. That they're either paid, they are part of a group. It's all of that stuff. Whenever they do cancel culture, it is literally, we're going to get a bunch of people to try to embarrass someone, make someone feel bad, and make everyone associated feel bad, or say, "Oh my gosh, I would never say that." That's all. It's like, okay, whatever.
It's
Doesn't
an
I would
matter.
never say
opinion,
that
man.
either. But
It's,
Well,
a-
I mean,
it's just a
the
very
important
it's a
thing
very
here-
straightforward opinion. Of if you especially if you look at other countries.
Right.
I mean, like Russia or so many other more traditional. Go through Latin America and translate that into Spanish, and you're 100% good.
Well,
But an opinion
depends on who says it.
shouldn't matter. It's not.
Well, they
It's
matter,
all
right?
personal.
They're social. These are social things. People need to work this out with one another. But it is wrong as fuck to get corporations in on this and start monetizing the behavior, and centralized entities will take this and turn it into a messaging weapon. And this is already something we see happen all the time with all of these companies that still employ child labor, yet they paint their logos with fucking rainbows. That's just one side of the whole thing. There are probably right now at least 2 or 3 companies that I've been able to find just by a cursory Google search that sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You can buy a marketing firm to help build your brand by tearing somebody down.
Yeah, well, that's I had to because
This is toxic.
I think
and-
you said, Greg, that we don't look at the people that are doing that. And Portnoy, I just saw this last week. He actually did research and found out who this marketing firm or this company.
It's a PAC.
They were-
It was a super PAC.
They're getting
Right.
paid. Yeah, they're also super PAC. They're they have a lot of political influence in other ways too.
So,
But they're getting money to research and go after someone and then attack them.
And act like they're independent.
So
Yeah.
So here's the thing, though, guys. Like, what the real deal is with ENS, what happened is the foundation acted preemptively of a planned DAO vote. They wanted it out of the public eye and under the rug, and they didn't want the community to get to vote on it. They pulled the vote out of active proposals, put it back in drafts, locked the comments to just admins, and then they acted as a foundation instead of a DAO. Is that a decentralized
No,
system?
no. You would
Is
never
that
expect that from
governance?
ENS, would you?
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't even expect that would be possible.
Well, it
with
was
the
a
ENS.
really great precedent to set if you're against the idea that communities should govern themselves.
Anyway,
And
that
that's
was
like something we
yeah,
can all
that's
agree
nice.
on, regardless of how you come down on the underlying social problem, which should be discussed, but it just shouldn't be weaponized with corporate power.
Well, I was thinking about this the other day, like yesterday, the day before. When I was a kid, if someone was a racist, that's their opinion. And it was the opposite. If you brought that up at work, you were in trouble. That's, I'm an American. I can do whatever. I have my own opinion, my own life. When I'm at work, then I have to, go by your standards. So a police officer could literally say, yeah, I'm super racist. I'm a member of the Klan. I hate all black people. I hate all minorities. That's what I believe in. And they couldn't do anything. They said, hey, when you're here, if we find out that you treat anyone of minority differently, if you, step out of line, we're going to fire you. We're going to go after you. But they would never say that you can't work here because of that.
Right.
If you got to keep your business life and your personal life separate,
Right.
do your job, and that's it.
And that's
And
the
now
direct feel of it, right?
We flip to this where you can go and find a tweet from when they were in college.
You know the funny thing,
and you're in trouble.
This is an interesting thing in history that the very people who support or execute cancel culture now would be massively opposed if you read the Henry Ford I don't know if it's his bio or his book. That's the book that he wrote, but it describes.
He was an asshole.
Yeah, if you were a drunkard, you would be fired, right? If you were drinking on your own time outside of company time, you would be canned. And anyway,
the thing that freaks me out about this is Sean could have been clipped right there, and an appropriately financed organization that had enough economic incentive could scrape the whole internet for video.
Exactly what I was just thinking.
And
I read the tweet,
and all of a sudden our show could be targeted just because somebody wants to highlight their wokeness by buying a campaigner to go scrape the web for any kind of cause they can rally behind.
Same thing about talking about vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and any vaccine opinion you might have on YouTube. Get cut, right?
I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think the danger is necessarily somebody trying to demonstrate their wokeness or whatever. That is dangerous, but the danger to me comes from other parties leveraging that group of people and doing things like cutting out something Sean said, cutting out something a tweet Joe read, and then sending it to them to be like, see, I know you're not going to watch the full episode, but here's what you can be enraged about, and here's a recording of them saying it, and here's a bunch of lies, and people will run with that.
Yeah, that's a new thing. People they're not held accountable. They don't get in trouble. They're not sued as much. I mean, that's starting to happen.
It's expensive.
But I was thinking about this new attitude of the government. It's like, hey, let's do whatever we want, and we're going to get 2 or 3 months out of it. It'll go to the Supreme Court. They'll say it's against the Constitution, it's illegal, and then we'll have to stop. But we'll get it done. Like that. It's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission, and that's kind of what's happening here. And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'll go to share something, and now I get that pop up. Hey, you didn't read that article. You're about to share it. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Then I'll read the article. But that's what people do. If they take that out of context and put that clip up, good people that their heart's in the right place are going to become enraged, and then it doesn't. Then they're going to tell their friends, hey, that Joe said this terrible thing. Right. Hey, Joe said this. When even when it comes out 2 weeks from then, that it was completely out of context. 75 or 80% of the people that saw what got them enraged aren't going to see, the apology or the retraction that people.
Well, how much will a $10 million marketing budget make sure that happens?
Well, and the funny thing is, the people who, in my opinion, right, the people who, a lot of people disagree. I disagree with multiple parts of that statement. I don't disagree with a couple of parts of it, right? So I guess which ones, right? The least. Anyway, whatever.
Everybody's ashamed of form.
The point is that you are better off letting that conversation happen, because the very things that are extremist in any conversation are going to be brought up. It's like, okay, some people believe certain things, but you don't have to. I don't know. You don't have to lynch them because they don't agree with you, and it's better to get those conversations out there. And words should not be illegal. There should be no word that is illegal. It's ridiculous. Kind of like two choices,
right? But go ahead, Evan.
I was going to say, I was just going to say, I mean, in one sense, it's true. This is kind of weaponizing wokeness and, activating a community of people who are going to get really angry about this and using it against someone. On the other hand, on your point about, separating your personal beliefs and professional life. I think that's the problem here, is that it gets a little bit muddy because, in the crypto space, your professional life does exist somewhat on Twitter, and this is the same place you're going to be sharing professional, opinions and beliefs. And so I think this is where it gets blurry. I don't know if this guy should have gotten fired for this or canceled or whatever. I definitely disagree with the tweet, and I thought it was going to be a little bit more on the fence in terms of whether it could be interpreted as offensive or not. But
it's really.
I thought it was
it's
way
offensive
more
to like
offensive.
most people, right?
yeah,
I thought it
exactly.
was gonna be way more offensive. I thought it was going to be
Really?
like
No,
people
Well,
out.
and he was, the crazy thing is he was always open about the fact that was out there, and everybody was working with him, like sort of knew he was like that. He just didn't bring it to work. It was literally a thing where
I mean, it's an odd world too. What's it, Luke Bitcoin, right? What's his name, Luke? I mean, he and I don't know if he still does, but in his code, it would put prayers into Bitcoin block. You guys remember that? I mean, it's kind of, a lot of people disagree with this, but it's like he won the block. He put a prayer into it. It's interesting, right? He's super Catholic too. I think he's the same type of.
Yeah, I think he's in the Justice League.
Evan, were you about to say something? I feel like you have more opinion on
Super Catholic.
Anyway, we can go. Let's go on. This like we kind of veered around, but I mean the most important thing about this is that the woke world has made its first real, and maybe the first real hit with the crypto world, particularly with DAOs, and DAOs failed. It's important the model you have for your
this
DAO.
DAO failed to be a DAO because they structured it improperly to make it a community thing no matter what, right?
Yeah.
This should have been a community thing.
The model is very important. You have to be careful.
And to me, this is what's crazy is this is where our interests actually align with the folks who think that these conversations need to happen. So I'm actually not.
And by the way,
completely.
The most important point about it is not the political side and the woke side and any of that. The most important point is the DAO is there for what reason? The DAO is there to govern this system. It has apparently failed because the one person who is leading it, who has gotten it the furthest, is now not there. And irrespective of his political opinions, I was like, I'll work with anybody on any political opinion, so long as they aren't, going to stab me in the back, which happens way too often, by the way. But the point is getting that system to move forward, right? And that's why the DAO is there. And I do think it's a better model than other models because it's transparent, right?
And I feel like DAOs present an opportunity to have these conversations in a better way. They need to happen still. I feel like we need to talk about this stuff because it hasn't been talked about publicly, and all these are under the surface, right?
Because at some
if
point,
we just sweep it under the rug, we're kind of being the bad guys too in a way.
Yeah, because at some point when he is talking to Anheuser-Busch, this might be an issue which would prevent the ENS system from moving forward, and therefore it is a real topic.
I just think it's got to be a productive dialogue, and DAOs can do that, if we use them the right way.
Yeah.
So
okay.
When you just said that, I had an epiphany, and it's funny because of who I am and what I do. When he's talking to Anheuser-Busch, this is the one time in the past when someone's personal life comes into play when they're being hired or getting a job with someone as like an influencer, as a for their personality is what the company is buying. So in that case, then that's we don't want because of what you said here or what you did here. That's always been a thing. And so much of the world now revolves around influence in that way. How many likes you get, how many followers you have for regular people. Like you could be in junior high, and that's a thing. That you have to have so many followers or you're like a loser. So that has become such a big part of our culture that I think that is one of probably the biggest thing that's affected this and has brought that change.
Right. Yeah. Was when we get last point, and I'll drop it. When we get the machines that we've optimized with the data that we've sold against people's will in on this game, trying to deliver the most effective service to the highest bidder, that's when you get this stuff turning into not what it was originally supposed to be about. Yeah. And that's really, I think, what we're seeing today, right? It shouldn't feel bad when this happens. It should feel like a conversation was had that was important. And instead it feels like something machine-like and evil invaded the space. That's kind of how I felt about the whole thing. It's like this is Web 2 in its first strike against Web 3 in a way that even the people having the discussion didn't realize.
Yeah, and you look at the projects that are most attacked and or held down, they are very much the most disruptive across the board, I would say. So anyway, Angel Breaker, a pretty heavy question here. This is good. Will interoperable blockchains be the new ESB enterprise service bus? APIs, one to N for each chain, libraries with smart contracts, how to place, compare, and interoperable blockchains in the old world. To at least get everyone the context here, that back in the day, let's say the 90s and especially in the 2000s, early 2000s, that IBM, Oracle, BEA, all the big enterprise IT companies were trying to sell SOAP, a protocol that was overly complex, XML, trying to sell various other appliances, very high dollar. These things were expensive. Only big companies and governments bought them. And they would push and push and push this thing called an enterprise service bus, which in my entire professional career, I never saw one implemented successfully, ever. It was basically a road to fill their consulting coffers. And it was very effective because you basically buy a product and then you'd be on the hook for probably 5 times as much in consulting, in actually making the product sit in place. And that was the enterprise service bus. In concept, it was awesome. And I think, and I'll give all this and you guys can say anything if you care to, but because it's pretty heavy one. But I think that blockchain it actually has a chance to do it the way that it was envisioned, or at least the way it was sold, because Dragonchain, we have an enterprise-focused smart contract orchestration system that lets you use models that are prevalent on the internet, or the RESTful model, if anybody cares to look that up, REST, or I've described it as the way that Unix System 5 command line stuff works, where you can actually have a command that gives you it gives you an output. You can pipe that output into another command to filter it, and pipe that output into another command to format it, and pipe that into a file or somewhere else. And it's remarkably flexible that you can tie all these different commands together and do things like that would on a Windows system would take for freaking ever. You wouldn't even be able to do it. It wouldn't be worth trying or messing with. And that means that you can do a full orchestration with smart contracts in a way that you can't do on Ethereum, or at least wouldn't make sense to. And I think, therefore, I had hoped back in, like, say, 2016, even 2015, that this is exactly what we would be having by now.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that we're the only ones here doing that, relatively, and there are toolkits, and there are companies that bring all of the pieces together that you could put those together yourself. But the issue, I think, is the vision that the entire crypto world is not focused on that. The entire crypto world is hyper focused on these little things. It's like, oh, hype, we can do this. And anyway,
consider this, guys, because I had this thought experiment pop into my head, right? So imagine you're running a series of infrastructure servers, like basically like some basic metal, and you can spin up containers for like Docker instances or whatever, virtual machines of different flavors, right? And you've got all these things running next to each other, and you might think of those as different blockchains. That sort of makes sense, but when you think about it like this, it gets more interesting, right? What if you are in fact accessing that from within a virtual world running one of those containers, and you're interfacing with those containers to import capabilities of those containers to run on your virtual computer in your virtual world? You hit enter, and it spins up a new thing right by you in your virtual space. Sort of like a cross of, I guess if blockchains are sort of the real or the reification of the digital, then then they're both hardware and software. So it's not just all of these protocols. It's these protocols and software libraries at the same time. Like you will be able to interact with all of the different chains in a way that lets you not just modify how you're talking to the machine, but which machine you're talking to.
Right. Right.
It's kind of weird.
I had a question for you, Joe. For the model that you were talking about, where you provide or sell a piece of software, but then you're really banking on the service contract to maintain and keep all that running for the client or the customer. Is that similar or the same model that Red Hat has with their like enterprise, like the software is free or something, but you got to have a contract for service to have the Red Hat.
Red Hat was really
service.
interesting. They pivoted a few times with the model they would sell under. I was always kind of surprised, but it was more than anything they had to deal. I would compare what Red Hat had to deal with very much with what we have to deal with in the crypto world in selling to the traditional world, because Red Hat was competing against in the government world you call them lobbyists, but they were you would see somebody from IBM, Oracle, or BEA, Hollywood, gorgeous, beautiful people would come in. I'm not joking, and they would sell, right? And say, "Oh, you want our product?" And you're like, "Holy crap, these guys, these gals," and they send them in, and Red Hat didn't have that, right? Red Hat would be selling an open source product that, like say, the government and really big organizations would say, "Well, wait a minute. If it's open source, it's not," especially back in the day, they would discount its value,
right?
Because I'm not paying for it, number one, and because I can't point a finger. If I fail and my boss tells me something, I can't point to the open source world. Whereas with IBM, I can point to my account manager and say, "You fucking fix this," right?
I've had
there's
a
weird
similar
and why
experience.
and
where
the open source answer is, why would you want to fuck up in the first place?
Right. Well, and the answer we'd always have for getting open source brought in was, sure, you can buy the support. That was like always a requirement. Well, we had to buy support. So you have to be able to get support. Red Hat finally kind of picked up on that, and they provided some really, in my opinion, just amazing value, because they would say, look, for this amount of money, which was really low, we will have a person on site 8 hours a day. Right. And it's like holy crap, why are you guys not doing this? And then the other side was that you have the staff already here in the organization, that if we had to go into the open source and figure out what the problem is, we can do it. Right. Let alone you could ask someone out in the real world, which might be harder to do security wise. But the crazy thing is that it was really hard to get them to grasp that, because it's that whole expert has to be far away. I have to hire an expert that isn't in my town, or else I don't trust the guy who's working in my cube down there. Where we had multiple cases where we had purchased software, multi-million-dollar software in government we didn't have the access to, that I even decompiled some before to figure out there was a bug in one of them. We had to work our way around a bug that the creators of the software didn't know about, and it's nuts, right? And it was very simple stuff, but with open source, it would have been it's like, oh, it would probably already been found. But
I think the trick is there's nothing new under the sun, right? Like people aren't buying some great new thing; they're buying something that's been closed off and packaged as a great new thing, when they're missing out on the opportunity to build on this foundational technology continually, instead of being sold a repackaged version of it just to make it feel different every few years.
That is a business tendency that I've seen too, even in smaller stuff, where I was, I was recommending a build for a storage network attached storage, and I was like, look, man, let me just part this out and build it for you. Throw some open source software on there, keep it updated. Call me if you need something, and we'll go with that. But they got together and decided, like, that's great, I appreciate that, but we're going to get this commercial, this QNAP system that's like a product with a warranty and a company behind it, that way, yada, yada. Guess what's sitting on a shelf, like, unupdated with a ransomware vulnerability on it right now? The closed QNAP thing they bought, it's something
that anyone interested in blockchain tech should know about software history. And this is something you won't read anywhere else, but this is the absolute truth that basically GNU Linux, right? So, and you say GNU Linux because it's both the GNU project, which is a huge value to the open source world, and then Linux itself, which was a kernel that effectively gave you the ability to have more power in time than the proprietary, very expensive Unix installs on your freaking local PC, right? It was an amazing thing moving as a developer from Windows to Linux. Stuff actually worked. Stuff worked the way you expected. Stuff repeated. You didn't have to worry about stuff. You could sleep at night. It was amazing, the difference for a person. And it became obvious to me that is going to win because people are looking at it. You have the opportunity to improve it. You have various incentives to improve it because you're running it, right? The modeling is important, and that's why Dragonchain has the architectural modeling it does, which is a different, much deeper subject to go into. But the fact that Linux runs on almost anything now, it is. And when I said that, I would tell my bosses that back in the 90s. Didn't believe me, right? It's like this now. It's running on the freaking monitor that you have in front of you today. It's running on the phone, unless you have an iPhone in which a Unix version is running, which is very similar. But Linux is running on your TV. It's running anything that has any reasonable amount of compute power on it today, everywhere in the world. And it didn't even have in the piece that, in my opinion, that Bitcoin first added, which was the scarcity, the tokenization that drove Bitcoin software to be the biggest compute concern on Earth, right? And so you think about those things that that model works, and it took longer for Linux to do what Bitcoin has done because Bitcoin has added this other thing, and that's the future of software. So
you raised an interesting point. Evan, did you have something? Before I jump on my point, I want to give you a chance to talk on this one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was actually going to say, like, it's interesting because how you mentioned sort of larger platforms and more established platforms with big salesmen selling stuff and for a lot of money inspires confidence in some way. And we kind of experience this at Tatum because a lot of our platform is open source. It's completely free, for all the features and everything. And in some ways, from a marketing perspective, that's a little bit more difficult to get people on board with because, they're thinking, what are you giving me this for free for? Is it going to work? I mean, Alchemy and Infura are really expensive. They definitely have to work, but I don't know about this thing. So it's kind of, it's all about perception in this way. So yeah.
Big deal.
And I think that's an interesting point. Like, open source software has never been properly valued in the amount of input that's gone into it, right? Like, when you're talking about, an open source project that somebody's recommending you use in a business context, there's been a lot of fucking work put into that. It's not present in a dollar value that you can count in terms of costs on a balance sheet anywhere. It's too chaotic for that. It's too decentralized. We now have decentralized value tracking systems that can go right along with it. Like, you can actually see how much work has been put into it in a way that doesn't require you to have an org, peeing on the corners. So, yeah.
And I will say there are, and by the way, even on that, there are tribes, even outside of crypto, that the reason that Linux took so long is that Microsoft tried to attack it, failed. Oracle tried to attack it, failed. All these very, very large enterprise-focused businesses, now IBM kind of picked it up and adopted it, and that was very smart on their part. But it's interesting because even something like GitHub is a prime opportunity, and we even have a bounty out there to do it. And looking for partners long term on this, that an incentive system built into open source projects would be remarkable, because if the people who are actually running it were generating tokens as some type of proof of work, could actually then have the most weight on which features were built, and yet it would still be free. If a developer is like, screw that, I don't care to get paid, I want to build this, but they would have the money there if they wanted. They could say, oh, you want that? I can do that in a day. I'll build it. Boom.
Right. Well, I mean, and if we think about it like that, then we can start engineering the architectures for modularity, right? So that things can be happening in massive parallel, like big plugin systems, right? To where it doesn't, it's not so much can we have this feature next. It's like, what feature should we throw into the massively parallel feature verse that is happening there's an app for that on really powerful computing operations. Like it can be
feature verse.
It can be a self-feeding accelerating curve, right? Like it can actually accelerate itself as it accelerates.
Yeah. But by the way, I should mention, you can't do tokenization or rewards. It's against GitHub's terms of service. So it's needed, and yet why have they? It's like that should be
they're leaving a gap in line.
The most valuable thing for all of the projects that they have that are open source. I mean, it's I don't know.
Who's doing open source Git? Or open source GitHub?
Git is
doing
open
decentralized
source,
GitHub rather.
So there is a GitLab. So our idea is to take GitLab, tie it in, and that's why interoperability matters with blockchain.
Do you guys know if anybody's building an open source or a decentralized Web3 variant of GitHub? Is anybody doing that yet?
We have it on our list. That's what we'd like to build.
There we
but
go.
we need partners. So anyway, okay. Next question.
Sounds like, to wrap that question up, that you're with Angel Breaker's question about will this be, how do you? It sounds like what you're saying, Joe, is that blockchain and cryptocurrency will potentially make that ESB concept work.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the wrap up is that I think I would envision it should, and it should be a better implementation of that, and yet it's against the grain. It's against the flow. People are going to have to freaking stop being so dogmatic. People are going to have to start opening their mind about how we can't, you can't be dogmatic about this stuff. It's complicated stuff. You just have to make it work. Anyway, okay.
If we break functional fixing this, we'll succeed at it though. It's like sort of all of that, but not the old world.
Right, exactly. And it's, what matters if it works. So Weber 3, would something like Spooky Swap count as interoperability, since you can bridge, let's say, Ethereum to FTM, Ethereum ETH to FTM ETH, or BEP20 to FTM BNB? I don't know anything about Spooky Swap.
It's I would say no. I just learned about it recently. I hit up Y'all Weird and was like, hey, there's this thing I want to buy, but it's on Phantom. Can you give me the one text rundown on how do I do that? And from what I understand from that conversation, no, it's not interop. It's just it's a bridge where you manually have to, send this to that thing that you trust, and then that, it's a manual process where you basically end up. I don't know if you're swapping for wrapped. What do you think? You got to go buy. You know what? I should just go read it. I don't think so. My answer is no. I think it's one of those manual, almost like a wrapped.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. But then I thought about it more, and I guess in the legalistic sense that annoys you, it is. But it's not. It's like the intent of the law versus the letter of the law thing. Because when I think of interoperability, I think of using all the features of a certain product anywhere. When you can use that in different chains, which you're technically doing that with a swap. So I guess it is, but
I see it more as the reason I don't think so is just that it's not an automated enough process. It's hard and takes too much meat to do it. But what were you saying?
Very basic. It's very basic.
I'm gonna share something.
Technically, you end up with the right asset on the right network, right?
So it's the lack of automation that makes it not a swap, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I just don't think it's streamlined enough, or to be able to use something on a different network. You're basically moving your entire thing over there, right? You're moving your entire operation over to this network, right? You're migrating over. That's a migration in my view. You're not using that network from within this network. For example, you're not using Spooky Swap from Ethereum, for example. So I don't see it as an interop if you have to migrate over there. That's different than being able to interop with something without migrating over there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's how I see it though. That's my how my
I think
brain wraps around it.
think you're kind of onto something there, because there's an inherent danger to like, I think the future is multi-chain maybe, but not so much cross-chain, right? It's the bouncing of assets across the chains that doesn't work super well. But the signaling across them still works, right? Like you just don't want to be sending ETH to Solana or whatever. Like that's how you end up having something fall over and a lot of people get broke.
Sending an asset back and forth is one thing, but like using features of another platform from a platform that doesn't not natively support it is a true interoperability, I believe.
Right.
So I'm going to share this. This is you guys can hear me, right? I dropped out. Chrome died on me. This is important to the conversation. It's about interoperability. So this is how Dragonchain sees interoperability. It's very philosophical. So these are probably ranked by order of importance for at least for a business, maybe. I mean, but you could take it as it is. That token transfer seems to be the thing that, through its history in the crypto world, has been the focus, right, on interoperability. It's like, oh, I just want to move my tokens over to this other chain. And it's like, it makes sense in some cases for exchanges. It makes sense in some cases financially. It makes sense in some cases for when the fees on Ethereum go crazy or something like that, right? There's value there, but I don't think it's something that for adoption in the real world anybody gives a shit about, right? You go to Pepsi or Coke, or you go to a big enterprise somewhere, they don't care. They're going to build on one. Why would I care about that, right? Now, if you go to something like Binance, sure, but that's like inside baseball stuff. It's all, it's preaching to the choir. Security, which was the first thing we built even at Disney, and I still can't believe it, with all the politics and everything, that we actually got Disney in 2015 to approve running a full Bitcoin node, right, in-house, and using it, and in our, basically connecting to it and building it out. Pretty crazy stuff. But basically, I guess to explain it quickly, we separate the payload, which might be proprietary info, might be GDPR stuff of people's identity or financial info. We separate that from the proof. So unlike most other chains, and most of the dogma is you put it all on chain. It has to be on chain. And it's like, no, we put well, I don't say no, I guess, but we put that private info on a private chain, but we put the proof info on all of the public chains, right? And as many as we can get, because now I can hold this private info. I can make a prediction. I could do something that you sue me for later, and when I go to court, I can show what you actually said, not what you told the court, and I can have proof that you actually said that, which they can independently verify, right? Right. And the reason, there's a lot of stuff about scalability that matters there and everything else, but security is a massive one, because you can leverage other chains for their inbuilt inherent security, the network security, the variety of different types of algorithms that they do for proof. Right.
Kind of like their hyperstate.
Yeah, so that's a massive effect that, I could just basically tag, and like we said, when we were inside of Disney, we did Bitcoin. When we came out commercially, the first thing we hit was Ethereum, because Ethereum was now there and everything else. And then we added Bitcoin after on the commercial side. Extremely powerful, because and no one's really grasped this yet. I brought it up Web3 in 2015, I think. Sorry, Web3. Dang it, the standards body. I'm blanking right now, guys. W3C. Yeah, W3C. Yeah. That I brought it up back then, that we can actually measure the value of a transaction on a block. And by value, I mean how much would it take for an entity to fork the chain at that point in the past and change that block, and change the data. It's massively expensive when you're using Bitcoin and even Ethereum. Right. The third, and we call these dimensions, right? The third is utility. That is, if I'm building something over here, either in the traditional world or if I'm building it on the blockchain, and I want to use storage, or I want to use Sidecoin to store some data, that's a massive ability, because that means new things that come up in the future, you can say, oh, here's this new amazing capability that some blockchain puts in place. I can connect to it at any point in time in the future and build my system through an interoperability to those blockchains, right?
Right. So it's like a coherent runtime or a
Right.
place where programs run that you
Right.
can call different whole sets of capability in, sort of the same way you
Right.
might build a social gaming app
Right.
that has microtransactions to buy chips or whatever, buy pieces.
Yep.
By pulling in the FaceTime library and then also pulling the Apple Pay library and then also pulling in the
Exactly.
GPU library.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then they run in this space.
And
They're not
that's-
necessarily working
Yep.
across each other. You know, like
Yep.
the
And that's-
FaceTime is not calling Apple Pay, but your application is calling all three.
And that's how in the traditional world, as a software developer, you have to think of things. It's like, okay, I'm going to use the best of breed to do X. I'm going to use the best of breed to do Y, and I'm going to build the little bit that I actually need to put together for my customer. Right? That's how you're supposed to do stuff, and nobody does. And then the last is traditional systems. That a blockchain should be able to interact with traditional systems, and I think the crypto world has this all wrong, and it's largely based on, in my opinion, apologies here, in my opinion, it's based upon hype, which is very similar to the way that IBM and Oracle did things in the past, where, oh, you want to work with an outside system, you need a decentralized Oracle. It's like, well, you know what? Guess what? I really, give me a case where I really need a decentralized Oracle.
Right?
Yeah, the only time I would say is for an exchange. An exchange, it makes sense. We want to get the price that is, but still, that's even hard to do. But but it is doable. But that's such an edge case. So
well, it's like, how much do you need to dispense with trust? And if the answer is this thing works barely because we have too much distrust in our interaction with it, then you probably need something that you can trust without verifying.
For a business,
by contacting somebody that has to be contacted and whatever, like how banks reconcile books.
Well, and for a business who has customers who are coming to the business to do something, the business in those cases will have they're already a business. They're going to have a contract with someone who's going to deliver this data, and that there will be consequences if it is inaccurate, right? So it's already you can already handle it for the very people that we should be focused on getting adoption with. So the traditional systems model is basically, you need a system that a coder can pull any API, like you mentioned before, a Stripe API, an API to Twitter, an API to every reasonable system out there already has an API.
Well, let me throw a question to you guys real fast on this one, because I think there's an interesting thing here we haven't talked about yet. Like, there's sort of this technical decentralization that we're kind of poking at now that comes with this, and then there's sort of like the people sphere of it, the interactions between groups across the different places that need to interact with these tools, right? Like, how does that become important when we think about when is trustlessness as important as it is and when is it not? Like, how do we use these tools wisely without trying to prescribe how we believe the world should be?
I'm sorry, I talked too much there, so you guys.
I want to rephrase what I said. My answer to Weber 3, I think that is maybe technically an example of one form of interoperability, but it's boring, and it's not the interoperability that I think is revolutionary. To be able to move an ERC20 to a BEP20 or to another network like that. I can see that being super useful though. Like, look at, for example, DIN as a business. If you're, let's say, for example, it became important enough and we didn't have any other features to work on at the moment, but we had this big problem with huge Ethereum gas fees, right? And it's a problem in the community, and we know, okay, maybe we're confident that that the fees will go down in the future, but we don't want our community to eat that in the meantime. We could pivot to allow people to withdraw to either Ethereum, or if they don't care about security as much, maybe Binance Smart Chain or to Solana or something. That takes some development work, but the interoperability there allows you to pivot whenever things are slowing your business down, even if it's just temporary. But we could deploy the same assets and give the user the choice of where they want to withdraw them to, and it would not affect our like max supply and stuff like that, we wouldn't have to deploy. Like one project I'm in, what they did was they deployed additional assets everywhere, and then their supply just ballooned, and so they just swap between theirs, and then that's the interoperability. Without affecting anything in your workflow in your business, being able to use other networks from within your own, that's the interesting part to me.
There's super interesting things that you could think about economically there too, because depending on how you do that, you could make transfers require burn from one. I'm burning it on Ethereum to go over to Binance, which means something because now my supply is lower on Ethereum. It's just it is a very interesting angle to some of that. I don't know. I wish somebody would experiment with it. Nobody has really too much. Okay, next. Weber 3. Is it Weber 3?
Wait,
No.
Evan, did you have a thought? You look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, well, kind of.
It's
Well,
cool.
no. I mean, what I was going to say was in terms of utility and pivoting from chain to chain and these types of things. Like we see a lot of, especially with the kind of Polygon debacle with Sunflower a few weeks ago or a month ago. Was everyone saying, okay, why isn't this working? What can we do? And the answer is use a different chain. And the only way to do that, if you've built something from scratch, is to start from scratch again. But I think a component of interoperability, as we try to implement it in Tatum, is allowing people to pivot from chain to chain or integrate multiple chains, transfer assets between chains using bridges, interacting with these smart contracts, but also burning on one chain and minting on another and do things in this way. So anyways, I think the utility aspect is one of the less boring aspects that we're talking about here.
Right.
I think it's the most important one.
And just out of curiosity, I've heard a little bit about Tatum, but just give me some context where you're coming from. I think now might be an opportune time to tell us.
So I'm trying not to fire off the marketing talk because I'm in the
please do. Please chill the hell out of us.
No, so basically, we're a framework, and we provide, a JavaScript SDK, a C# SDK, and REST API endpoints for a bunch of blockchain protocols. So 24 different blockchains and a bunch of test nets. Cool. And so, and just allow people to work between them with a layer of abstraction. And so that's where the interoperability comes in for us, and basically where most of my knowledge comes from.
You and I should talk more. I feel like you or that Tatum and Rivet have a lot in common, and we might have some mutual gain to be had in working together.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's
Probably
talk.
So I would bet so. These are both good companies. So okay. Next question. I think Jacob Wayne. Is that right? Do you think Facebook's Metaverse will ultimately fail specifically because they will most likely avoid interoperability with external system? That would be so meta. What do you guys think?
They're already failing. They're winding it down, aren't they? They're trying to.
I don't know. I saw some memes about it last night, but I didn't look into anything.
I guess they're getting rid of their cryptocurrency, which
I don't think that's the same thing at all. I think
they're having a lot of problems, man.
Yeah,
because
they're having bad PR.
And also, I think stuff that happened, like a year or 2 years ago, it's kind of finally coming home to roost. They might have to pull out of Europe, which is like 300 million people, which is going to be really huge. But still, it's that too big to fail. I think the question is more, and they will. I agree with what they said that they will have this attitude. It's not whether they're going to try to work with other platforms. It's will they let other platforms work with them? It's not. I don't think they're going to.
Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like Facebook is the castle, and instead of being fed wood to the fire to keep it moving around, it just eats its customers.
Yes.
It's funny. I was also thinking of an analogy for Facebook, and it wasn't the castle.
It's not going to work in the end.
I see them. And it's not even like mean to them. I hope people keep their jobs and stuff. But the reason I would hope that they crashed and burned would be because I see Facebook as this vacuum of value. It just sucks value out of communities that could be captured locally instead. And the less people if people abandon Facebook, that means they're going to look around for where else can they spend their sweat equity and their value and things like that.
And that's a sad thing, man, because that used to be part of their plan was to kind of empower local small businesses.
You mean marketing?
To market, because they could target that everyone, within 100 miles of this zip code, because that was a really cool thing. I remember
kind of like what would happen if AOL had survived and built its model out to the whole scale of the whole world in a way.
Yeah. Well, kind of two things. I mean, the interesting thing, and I have no idea if there's a culture shift or anything there, because I'm not on Facebook, thankfully, but they used to have APIs so you could run apps in there. I mean, we thought about building some really ridiculous, funny ones in the past. Things like, and they had APIs. You'd run a server. You would interact with their API. People, and that's whole the farm games and all that crap that was running on there, right? There's a ton of money made in those days because of that interoperability, because they had an API to do it, right? So I would wonder, why wouldn't they do something similar? You would think it would make sense to them. But the other side of it is, Facebook is LifeLog. I mean, Facebook was intended to capture all of that info for other reasons that weren't even monetary, probably.
Right.
And because you have to think, reading between the lines, why would an organization sacrifice 300 million? Is probably they probably count those 300 million people as a billion in Europe. With the way they do metrics, which is the third point I'll make, but that why would they sacrifice that just so they can keep their servers running in Northern California? That seems odd to me. He's like, wouldn't you say, sure, we'll put some servers in Spain and Germany and wherever else, and we'll comply, right? Why would they not do that? It seems odd that they wouldn't do that. There's a reason.
I just feel like a community government thing is going to take them over. Like they're not going to be able to change fast enough.
And the third thing is, I think we won't know until it's done that they've really failed and lost everybody, because they count people that their metrics are fake. So they have been from the beginning to raise money. It was fraud from the beginning. Anyway.
They would have to exit the public markets to community. They would have to we're building a community governance system, and you get to own Facebook now, and we're leaving, which will never happen. But if they did that, then people could really make Facebook properly their own, which was always the idea, right? It's like your web page, but you don't have to know how to code.
Yeah.
Well, I think last week was the first week in their history that they had a decrease in logins. So that was one of the big things.
Yeah, I heard about that.
This is maybe something that I have wrong, but I think that Facebook would fail in a metaverse because they don't understand people and communities as well as they think they do. They've created a certain type of person, and they've created types of communities that kind of stemmed from their own, like the way that they handle user accounts,
more
the
like
way
they've
that they
gotten
put people in relative bubbles.
Model than modeled people.
So a metaverse that they build is going to be to that crowd, to that community.
It's be their metaverse, their community, not what people want.
And that's not necessarily the real.
It's not
world
like they're going to work with
life.
other projects or try to make something or accept something that someone else made that's awesome. They're going to say, no, this is what it is. This is what's cool. You will do what we say. You will like what we give you, and that is going to be, one of their
or even just the extent that they go through to put people in a comfortable position. Like you're always going to be in an echo chamber in your happy place, and that's not real communities. That's not how actual, real world communities are. It's not how neighborhoods are. Your neighbors aren't exactly. One of your neighbors might be a different religion. Are you going to cancel their house? That kind of thing.
Right. It's on the tip of your tongue, Evan. You look like you're about to say something.
No. I'm actually I'm not so up on exactly why. Well, two things. The reason for moving the servers to the U.S. or threatening to pull out of Europe, is it adherence to GDPR? And if so, what about that is exactly the problem here? I mean, as in, I think that's the question to ask: is it the amount of processing of the data that's going to cost so much more money? Is there?
I think what they said was their exact words were, "We can't run our business model there."
Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is they're being paid by Intel orgs to gather the info. So that's their business model in the depth. So
moreover,
that means they can't run stuff in Europe. What's that?
We're saying that it's so far off from what they do in a fundamental way that it's cheaper for them to leave it and sacrifice that market than it is for them to adapt.
Yeah, and it's a
Which is-
threat.
which
Well, I
is
think
really
they're
kind
being
of
subsidized
fascinating,
too,
yeah.
though. I think they're they're fine, that financially. Basically,
I think it's
they're
a
gonna-
bigger. I think it's a bigger question, or because it's basically like, hey, if you can do this there, why can't you do it everywhere? And then other places will demand that they do it the same way, which will
Right.
screw up everything. So
Like
I
what they're
think
saying
that's
is
why
we
they
don't
look at
wanna-
it as it's cheaper to lose this, but then keep all of our our thumbs in the other pies, versus moving out of that, and then everyone's like, hey man, get your finger out of my pie. I think it'll cascade.
Okay, how much do you think it is pressure to get them to break themselves up?
From which side?
Okay, so for instance, if Facebook decided they were going to have Facebook Europe as a separate company and Facebook North America as a separate company, because they had to adapt those sort of balkanized regulations, that would be an end that Zuckerberg would win political favors for pursuing.
That would be smart, but it goes against their hubris.
Well, I don't think it would be smart. I think it would actually be destructive, right? Like,
I don't. I think it'd
it
be.
would basically
think
be
it
like
would.
an invitation to every regime to make laws that are so different.
Well, no.
that they
If
exactly
the way
want.
you would frame it is it would be a benefit. It's like if you subsidize this, we will make an entity that will be subject to all of your regulations.
But by the
They-
fourth time they've
they
done
do
it,
that.
they'll have automated a model of balkanizing it, and then
Mm-hmm.
then every dictatorship on earth can have a custom Facebook.
Yeah, but most of them aren't going to be the EU or North America. You aren't going to have. Maybe you'd have India that might have some weight like that, but they aren't going to have many other places. You're talking about
Right.
2 or 3 of them. So
Like, if it's going to be decentralized, I don't think it should go to global region federation as an intermediary step.
yeah,
Like,
the
that
great
would-
thing
that
is
would
they won't
not
do
help.
it. So the great thing is they won't do it. Hopefully, they
Also,
just
I
won't.
wonder if you would get notified that they're coming from like Facebook Africa, because I mean I can't tell you how many times a day I get some ridiculously hot girl sending me a friend request, and I just scroll down, and then I could see something from like 3 weeks ago where they shared from like a small town in like Nigeria, about some
Oh,
meal
yeah.
they had. I'm like,
We had an African model that would constantly share Dragonchain FUD all over the place. You look her up and it's like, wait, who is this?
Why does she hate
it's like,
Dragonchain?
it's not really her. It's like, but anyway. Do we want to do? I think we're at the end. We have 6 minutes left. Do you want to do one more
Oh, wow.
quick, or do you want
Time flies when you're having fun, guys.
What do you guys? Let's
Not
do one
much,
more.
it's just
We
fun.
can do one more real quick. We hinted it, and that way
I'm down.
someone won't get upset. Let's do one more. Bring it back up. Uh-oh, she maybe froze.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
It's
there we go.
happening.
She brought it. Okay, anyway, sorry. Okay. M. Ladizi. I don't know how to pronounce that. Maybe comment how you pronounce M. Ladizi. Topic
I always
seems
call
like we
him
got the
Ladezi.
point.
Depends on
Most
coffee
of the
sometimes.
blockchain industry in terms, we can go quick. Most of the blockchain industry in terms of missing interoperability. Do you agree? Wait, I don't know if I understand. I'm most keen to see how interoperability is going to work in financial system, transport, and trade. Do you think interoperability approach will vary depending on the industry? What do you guys think?
I think it depends on
State,
what you
maybe.
mean by interoperability. I think the topic is implying that there are a lot of blockchains that are saying, okay, we're interoperable now. Where on its face, at least through the advertising, it seems like that's a non-issue these days. Like it's solved, interoperability.
Right.
Now, whether or not that's, buzzword only and maybe a technically true thing, I don't know. A lot of them are just token transfers or wraps. Adding
would
trust
say-
to a trustless system, to compromising trust for quote unquote interoperability. I don't think it's. No, I don't. I guess I don't agree with that. If that's what you mean, I don't think that's
I would
I
say
am
answer
the
this
state of
question.
things.
Yeah, no, I interpreted the question. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading the sentence differently because I think maybe the question is, do you think we've taken blockchain technology and the industry as far as it can go without having interoperability? Like, has it reached its limit in
Oh, I
terms of
see.
Maybe that,
Right.
I don't know. That's one interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're going to have a financial blockchain that handles the world's capital resources in terms of unused purchasing power, you're going to have transport resources tracking how many miles they've moved and what resources are available to pick up these things at this port, and then you know these things properly labeled and modeled for trade, for meeting World Trade Organization, part of, place of origin rules, and are the tariffs right? When you get to that level of complexity, right, you're going to run into a situation where, you're going to want to think, holy shit, we need interoperability in the sense of cross chain, and that starts to look like an impossible to solve problem, right? But if you think about it more like we were talking earlier, right, with the idea that it's not so much cross chain as it is the chains being pulled into a single runtime environment in whatever place that makes sense. Like the truck, for instance, you got to pay the driver, but you're not going to have the inventory tracking system for the cargo container that he's got loaded onto the back ask for him to be paid. That's you don't have to send cross-chain assets to make that happen. You just need to make sure that the truck platform is built properly.
I definitely think that interoperability will depend on what the business or industry is, especially when you're talking about stuff like Greg's talking about that's so huge and grandiose, like transport of goods and trade. Now you're talking about interactions between nations, and what if this nation put everything on Litecoin, and
We're
this
just going to
nation
need really smart middleware
have
developers.
that interoperability, or just won't work.
Right, because you're already seeing like I don't know how set in stone this is, but it looks like Costa Rica and the Chia network are working closely together for for assets in that nation. While I can't think of another example right now, but at the very least, China is going to have their own version of everything that maybe another nation state will need to interop with to be able to to trade on it. I don't
And
know.
then you could look at like a Huawei thing where it could be almost weaponized. Where, oh no, we're not going to interact with that blockchain because China uses it or this country uses it. We don't like them. We don't trust them. They could do some kind of finagling. Even and it's basically would be, I guess, FUD, but on a different scale. Because most people they don't understand blockchain at all. They barely know crypto exists, but people are becoming much more educated. Like it was a few months or a year or so ago when that ransomware happened, and the FBI said they got the Bitcoin back. They retrieved it, and immediately, like a huge amount of people like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
You didn't. What did you do? You have to explain. Oh, we got our ways, and everyone's like, no, you don't, because that's not how it works.
That is
And they had to
inspiring
come
to
out and
see
say,
the
we
literacy.
found the private keys. It was written down.
We play that song on the outro instead of the usual just for fun. The rap video is fucking ridiculous. Anyway, sorry.
Which one? Oh, okay. All right. Okay, let's go through. Thanks,
that.
everybody. Thanks to all the hosts for joining. What's going on this week? So, chance to tell us what's up with your project. Dave, start.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit already at the beginning, and if you want to know more, there's going to be a governance call this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern that will go through some of the things more broadly that I mentioned at the beginning. But we've got this huge platform-wide governance launching next week, probably next week. I'm almost sure, and it's going to allow so many. Well, here's what it's going to allow. It's going to allow DIN Social to streamline our prioritization of features that are rolling out, depending on people who have shown who have ownership in the platform through these NFTs that we're using. So this is the second governance system that this platform is launching in the last few months. And it's the one that kind of ties everything up into a nice package with a bow on it that says, here, you can go create and direct to the ship. So that's what we're doing, and we'll come see us at 3 o'clock. Swing by the DIN governance layer for the link to that.
Right. And I did hear from the devs. It looks like it's probably going to be next week.
Yeah.
It is done. It's in testing, and a big component is behavior, right? So it's super exciting because it kind of counters the potential for whale effect, right? That anybody who participates in even if you didn't bring any money in, you still get some influence.
And this is a system that we've had extensive conversations about the problem with like whales and people that have undue influence in the system and how they got their votes in the first place, and whether you can even like, what if you create a system that's just screens for good whales, you know, that kind of thing. Right. They have to show that they're aligned with your vision and with your goals to even become that. So, and then this is like also the ease of use, and any layman should be able to use it and participate. Let's say you wanted to start a DAO structure. We can do that on DIN. Right. And if you have enough know-how to set things up realistically, you can then just find people who align with your vision, who may not know how to use computers, but they can use an app and vote. So that's huge, really huge for us, and that's what's coming down the pipe, and it's basically here.
Yes, Greg.
All right. I will be brief because you guys heard about Mega Texas earlier. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Rivet. We are rolling out Cardinal EVM like imminently. Like it is literally, the process of standing up different stacks of infrastructure that interoperate together. At this point, we're moving out there. We're going to have very, very soon an announcement about how we are going to cut over to that for people who are existing users of Rivet. So you'll have plenty of. Don't worry, it's not going to surprise you. You will have chances to parallelize and test it to make sure that it does work as we will describe it, which is seamlessly. Like you shouldn't have to change anything in order for this to just keep working like it does. It'll just work better. And we're just real excited to get things going there. So. I guess I'll end with what I always do. If you've got an idea, go build it. And if you want to build it on a blockchain that we support, you can check out rivet.cloud.
Evan.
So, we are revamping and have already revamped our webhook notification. So that's the big feature we're adding this month. And we're going to be rolling this out continuously over the next several months. Right now, the way it works is it's just an API call to monitor any address for any kind of incoming and outgoing token transactions, and it sends webhook notifications. This used to be really complicated within Tatum and anywhere else, and now it's super simple. And we've just rolled it out on 4 blockchains. I believe it's on Solana, Celo, Polygon, and Ethereum. But we're going to be doing this for a lot of them, all the blockchains we support, and then we're going to be supporting more blockchains just for this notifications API. So it's a big thing that we're rolling out right now, and you can go test it right now actually and play with it with the blockchains we already support. So.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Sean.
Usual stuff. Check me out tomorrow on Crypto Rewind. It'll be on Rice TVX. It's at 7 Eastern. Tuesday. No, this week's going to be Monday on Litecoin Lisa, which will be 5 o'clock Eastern. That's about it. I wanted to say in our and I didn't even get to it. I made a joke about the meth pipes, but and that went off for like 10 minutes. But the big acceptance of crypto this past week has been just mind blowing to me. Fidelity came out and said that it's better than gold, which was shocking.
Fucking BlackRock's trading it now.
They said that it is. Yeah, they said that it's the best form of money.
What shifted? Something's up. Well,
the IRS is not going to.
I think they've got us.
The IRS is not going to tax people for anything that you earn from farming or from DeFi.
That was a clever legal argument, actually.
Sell it, they're not taxing you. There's several bills that are going to be make the IRS. It's not a taxable event. You don't have to pay any taxes on any transactions $200 and under. So that'll make it so that people can use it to buy.
By the way, that's something hasn't been answered. The staking, does that apply to forks? Because that's still there, and effectively it would be staking. If I held Bitcoin,
Holy shit.
that's a
Technically,
staking.
yes.
Joe, did you just invent the argument that makes it so that anytime the blockchain's forked, everything that happened before is
Well, it's staking.
free buying with fiat, and
Yeah,
it becomes
from what they said, what
becomes
the IRS
a
said is
user-generated
once you sell
asset?
it, it's not a taxable event. And so if you took
That
that
would be
forked
awesome.
coin and then you got a loan on it through DeFi, you would never create a taxable event ever.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. What else was there? Oh, Coinbase partnered with TurboTax. Regular no coiners can now get their tax return
That's
in
right.
Bitcoin or crypto, which is just these names, Fidelity, TurboTax. It's like wow.
And this is probably unrelated, and it's a company that's already been doing Bitcoin a long time. But I noticed on my Cash App, which I use for Bitcoin for a lot of purposes, like their debit card and stuff like that, popped up a notification. They'll just do my taxes for me now. They were already sending me a 1099 saying, "Here's your
Oh, that's
your
nice.
Bitcoin stuff."
That'd be
Now there's a button that says
man.
"Do my taxes," and I was like, "Oh, well, that's
That would be all right.
That's a nice button to
Jeez.
have.
Yeah. On my note, I'll go Dragonchain here. Oh, by the way, I almost took a job with Fidelity for their blockchain director,
Wow.
lead,
By
whatever.
the grace of God, go you.
They did not. They didn't offer enough. They were. I didn't like the way they negotiated either. So anyway, noting. Dragonchain. We have a bunch of stuff. We expect a new level 5 interchain. Speaking of, we haven't announced what it will be, but it's in partnership with a customer, so it's the perfect way to do it. It's a beautiful thing, and I don't have the rollout date on it. I'm hoping it's relatively soon, and then I'll give another little tease that we're expecting, and this will be, it might be a few months out, but we're starting to really get some movement on a couple of things related to gaming and NFTs, and there are some really cool things that we're working on behind the scenes. So, FUD all you want. It's all good. We love you anyway, and make sure.
Honestly, I just wanted to reinforce what Joe just said. That's not bullshit. Like, there's a lot of FUD out there, but if you're building something, this is like things are coming around right now.
Little did I know when my dad told me you need to look for the things that people need, and you need to figure out a way, creative, maybe ideally even solutions that aren't maybe normal or obvious, right? That's the way that you do things. And little did I know that if you're a builder, if you're a creator, the bad side of it, and yet it's always hard because it's very lonely, but it's like you're going to get attacked out the freaking wazoo by everyone under the sun, and you never know the reason, right? Sometimes it's just that they had a bad day. Sometimes it's that somebody's paying them. Sometimes it's just that they philosophically hate you.
Maybe they care deeply and they're just miscommunicating that.
Maybe it makes it worse. That's why it's like, and it's hard to ignore, right? Like I tend to like, well, I have to convince them, right? It's just so hard. Anyway, it sucks. The world's people suck, but there are shining examples, you fellows among them, that make it worth living. Anyway,
thanks for letting me take that out of you, Joe. Thanks.
Shining examples like
I think
Mega
humanity's stand, man. I think
Mega
people are
Texas.
awesome with rare
sorry, that's
exceptions.
impromptu.
Mega Texas, because it
Anyway,
keeps the Republic.
So
saying
make
the-
sure you share this episode. The more you share it, the more the hosts, and the more of this info will get out there, because I think it's important info. It's like this stuff, in my opinion, is where the meat of the discussions, because it relates to anybody watching this. Hopefully, will get ideas. It's like, holy crap, I should go build that. That's what I want. We need people to be building stuff instead of just looking as like, oh, my coins haven't gone up today. My coins haven't gone up today. What are you doing? It's like, do something. You have the ability to do it. That's why you're here. Anyway, next week.
And if they're suggesting not open source, then wrong party.
Yes. Next week, the theme is mining. That's going to be a fun one because I'm super interested, and I've only done a little bit of it and years ago, and I did CPU mining in Bitcoin, right? fun stuff. But
Yeah, I'm getting back into that now with Monero, actually. So I'll have a little bit to talk about. I've got a machine with a house fan on it right now that I've got to come up with a better solution for. But yeah,
That's
interesting
cool.
stuff out there. I'm looking forward to that episode next week.
Yeah,
That's gonna be
really
neat.
wanna
I
know more.
haven't learned a lot. I had no idea about mining, so it'd be cool.
Hey, Mind Your Business is going to be here. It's going to be pretty cool. He's a smart guy. He has just invented a blockchain with like ghost phone. It's called the de-Google or the un-Google phone.
Really?
Yeah, I was looking at like a Chromium version that was a de-Googled Chromium too. That's a trend that I'm seeing. I'm happy to see around too.
They had I almost got I couldn't get it, but I met one of the dev leads that's in Washington D.C. for the Ubuntu phone way back in the day. It's like I wanted that to take off so bad because it was so cool. You could basically walk around your phone, then you go to the office, you plug it in, and it's your freaking PC, right? And you just do your stuff. It's like we need that so much.
Check out Pine Phone, I think it's called, but it's using Plasma KDE on a phone and all the KDE apps instead of the Google Android store.
Okay. PINE?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, we'll look at that. All right. Okay. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks, everybody. It's a good show.
Thank you.
The first tap of a conductor's wand. The first written in a mile-high tower. The master link at the genesis of the never-ending chain. The moment a single empty canvas meets a singular master stroke. There is no one thing. Because now, there are many. Because soon, there will be more. Because one is ever the beginning. Like the first link in an infinite chain, or the first rivet in the tallest skyscraper. The master stroke is found in the masterpiece. What will you begin?